equally pose a challenge to some. However, talking about power dynamics within the sector and the opportunities that come with letting go of power and taking power, this presents to us elements we need to think about. Are we fully prepared for what each of these shifts mean? Are we really ready for what the shift we are clamoring for will bring to us? The global civil society system needs new forms of leadership to harness the opportunities for transformation. This plenary session will explore the themes of ownership and power in the context of shifting power from the international to the local domains. And of course, to have this discussion, we have wonderful colleagues who represent the different geographical landscapes that we are talking about, the global north and the global south, who will be interrogating this further with us, provoking elements worth thinking about, and of course, possibly making recommendations that we shouldn't undermine. With me this afternoon is Janet Mawio. Janet is a certified executive leadership coach with over 30 years of experience in the global non-profit sector. She's a specialist in building development and philanthropic institutions. She has honed her skills in non-profit leadership, governance and management, organizational development, and change management process. Of course, you can now understand why Janet is really keen on having this discussion with us. She's equally versed with elements around local resource mobilization and asset development for non-profits. Janet has been involved in many diverse programs targeting marginalized communities in Africa. She advises high net worth families, corporates, and other development actors on impactful philanthropic giving. And of course, accompanying Janet is none other than Deborah Willig, who directs the NGO Futures Initiatives at Interaction, the largest alliance of international NGOs and partners in the United States of America. In this role, she convenes non-governmental organization leaders to explore how the world around us is changing, what this means for their organization strategies, and how successfully they can evolve. Deborah brings decades of experience to this conversation as she's been advising executives and the politicians, a wonderful stakeholder we need to factor into such conversations. She is also a certified leadership coach and facilitator and a member of the RINGO Advisory Board. Deborah's favorite part of her career is strengthening individuals and team skills and awareness so that they can have greater impact. Deborah and Janet, good morning, good afternoon. And we are very happy to have you for this conversation.
Thank you, Jim. Delighted to be here.
Great,
you,
great.
Very happy to be here.
Lovely. And it actually looks to be a very promising conversation. And I'm just going to invite, ask a question for us. And we will have a slide presented. And as we reflect through the questions, when you think of an international non-governmental organization working in the global south, what picture comes to your mind? Colleagues, it would be good to just think about that, be it from experience, be from observation. What comes to mind when you think of an INGO in the global south? Please share your thoughts in the chat, as these perspectives are quite key to shaping the conversations, enriching the conversations. Oh my, I like this. Gemma Holde says, compounds and 4x4s. Lillian Sheffield says, foreign based. Yvonne Madondo says, huge cars with prominent logos. Tara says, experts in senior jobs as experts in local context. Kira says dedicated people. Laurence says taking space. Mamata says a different class. Interesting descriptions here. Stephanie says processes and procedures. I like that. Lindsay says run by the North. Julia says white women talking to Black, brown children. Chibwe says patronizing. Isabella says proceduralization. What a word. Leila says bureaucracy. Mamata comes again, lock frame, the famous lock frame. Jack Calipenta says powerful. Karel says often arrogant, sometimes collaborative. I like the blend of adjectives. Hilal says colonial. Thank you very much, colleagues, for sharing these insights with us. They are quite, deep-rooted in the experiences, the observations that we have been having, in our respective contexts as we continue to do the great work that we are doing. Deborah, I will be coming to you. These words that have been described and shared with us, what do these words mean within a context that we are prophesying shifts the power more than we are experiencing a shift in power?
What do these words mean as relates to how we experience shift in power, Jim? Is that the question?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is it.
Yeah. I think they mean a reality check. Listening to you read the chats got me excited for an event I'm designing in January with CEOs of the US arms of international NGOs, where we'll be spending a few hours on power shift and what it means to the executives and their leadership. And I craved having this chat to put it as the opening contextualization. Hearing this, then what? What does this mean for your organization? Because everyone who's here is here with a good intent. And clearly that good intent has broken down when the vision that people witness is very polemic, very, patronizing is the word that comes to mind for me, hearing what was in the chat, and that's not the goal. So it sounds like there's some lostness on this journey and big grounds to make in realigning the reality we live in with what we're actually trying to do.
And I like that. With realigning what we are actually living with what we are trying to do really calls for the need for a shift, a veritable shift to take place. So in your view, Deborah, who should take the first action on championing the transformation we desire, particularly as we seek to shift power?
I think the first action has been long taken, whether that was with the Global Compact, whether that was with people speaking to the frustration that the Global Compact and all of the change has not become an actualization. I tend to speak with people who were at the headquarters, and with there, it's I think that the first move is the people internally within the organization saying, things aren't working, we need to change. But the second move, in that I'm hearing increasingly from our member CEOs, is the CEO saying, okay, so let's figure this out.
Janet, let me come to you. You come from a rich, over 30 years of working in different countries with different organizations, different partners, of course, within the global South. And here we are talking about, some of the characteristics of INGOs working in our countries, in our continent, in our region with 4x4 cars, big houses, demonstrating power, trying to patronize us. And we are clamoring for a change, for a shift in power. In your view, Janet, who needs to take that first move to ensure that we do have a shift in power?
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, those were very interesting adjectives that I saw there, and they truly represent a lot of what we witnessed and see in many places in Global South. And I think more of that, especially in the past, I think there's a little less now, but it is still significant. I guess it shows itself in different ways. And I actually think the person who has that authority, that presence, naturally would be the one to really take that initiative, because you are very present. When you are like that, you generally will intimidate anyway, even if you don't feel like that in yourself. You will intimidate, you have a presence, and you have a very strong presence. And I think that awareness about that strong presence is what someone needs to have and be aware about, so that they kind of know how they come across. And if you're aware how you come across, then you'll want to do differently. You'll want to kind of find a way to get to a point where you are as close as possible to the people you want to work with, and not have them look at you, like looking up at you, but rather, can you be at a level where you can communicate, you can engage? And that's why I think that person with that kind of a presence, authority, kind of, presence, I think needs to take that initiative and begin that conversation. It's just natural, like we see in different aspects in life.
I like that. It seems you both agree, to the fact that the person with the presence, the authority, they need to take that first action. But veritably speaking, what will it require for them? Here we are talking about, actors in the global north with the power. What will it require for them to actually make that first move, to take that first action, to say, we are letting go of power. Let us shift power. Deborah?
I love that Janet and I are both coaches here. I very much believe in the reason that I pursued coaching as part of what I do is the first step comes from inside. It comes from saying, what really matters? If I let go of all of my protection, my ego, my trying to be important, what's in my heart, what's in my soul, what's the world I want to live in, and having that be the North Star that you're pursuing. That's the very first step, is to get clear on what is it? And then the second step, which you didn't ask, Jim, but I think is key and difficult sometimes, is in shared space with others, trying to create that same energy, that same, we are sitting side by side, trying to make some very big changes. Let's figure it out together.
And Janet, from where you sit, what do you think, they require to have to ensure or to enable them to make that first move?
I think I very much agree with Deborah. I actually think that internal introspection of oneself, becoming aware of how you come across is actually very critical. Becoming aware about how others perceive you, or what your presence means when you are anywhere. And I think that is really essential. When that happens, then you will begin to think about, how do I get down to a point where I can communicate at the same level as the people I'm trying to help? And as you ask yourself those questions, you will want to engage. You will want not to talk down at anyone, not to use the power you already have. You'll want to sort of figure out and ask yourself hard questions. How can I? You will not go with a know-it-all attitude. You go with a learning mind. You go with a mind that is seeking to get help, as opposed to exercising the power you already have anyway, and all the might you have. It's more about learning, asking, coming down, and figuring out effective ways for you to communicate, where communication is both ways, not from you alone, but actually hearing. What am I hearing? What am I seeing? What does this mean? If you go with questions, you're likely to get somewhere.
Thank you very much. You know, Mamata in the chat says, understanding power that the INGOs hold is key to be able to see why it needs to be shared and or let go. And Jack Alipenta in the chat equally says, we shouldn't forget that power is sweet. And I'm smiling because I'm just imagining myself in a very powerful position and I'm being asked to let go of power, knowing that it is very sweet, Deborah. Power indeed is sweet. What does it mean for our colleagues in the North to let go of power?
I don't want to be repetitive, and I come back to the two things again. One is, what is it that you're trying to achieve? If you are really trying to achieve a greater quality of life for people around the world, then remember that it's not necessarily about your biggest fundraising goals or ensuring that your top staff are holding their power. And so, yeah, looking at what is it? And Jim, I'm sorry, as I was thinking, I also lost the question. I apologize. Say one more time.
Yeah.
Letting go of power. Yes. So it's that incredible clarity. It's a faith that your passion matters and you are not the only solution. So how do you get to that solution? It's centering the purpose and the vision that you are trying to create. It's having those types of conversations with your boards of directors, with your staff, to try and get them to also have their eye on not how do we make our organization grow and last as long as possible, but rather how do we have the intent that we've dedicated our lives to be the thing that comes to be in this world.
I like that response. And Tanya Chung in the chat says, I believe these organizations with power need to acknowledge and be comfortable with loss. I think they need to have honest conversations to get alignment with their board, their staff, their stakeholders about what they have to lose and what they will gain in the process, namely, living true to our values of equity, justice, humanity. Thank you very much, Tanya, for sharing those wonderful words. Gemma Holder says, awareness is so important, and it's not a one-off event. It's a regular, daily, early practice. Mamata says, accountability is key. Who are we accountable to? What needs to shift there? Colleagues, keep your comments coming in. It actually enriches, the discussions we are having. And, we are talking about INGOs letting go of power. Certainly, if they do, as some may be doing, it will definitely require organizations in the Global South to take power. Janet, over to you. What does it require for organizations in the Global South to take power?
Thank you, Jim. I think organizations in the Global South also have to engage in this process.
Janet, can you please check your sound?
Okay, can you hear me now?
No, I think it's still.
But now?
No, Janet.
Yeah.
Yes, interpreters, thank you, we got that. Janet, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I think it's better now.
You
Interpreters?
Can hear me?
Interpreters, is that better?
Right,
yes. Janet, over to you, please. Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that Global South actors also need to engage with this process. Unfortunately, if for years you've been you've been crushed, you can't wake up overnight. There is need to invest in a process of reigniting, re-energizing, giving confidence to a lot of Global South actors to be able to take that space comfortably. You can't just say you will shift the power today, here, take it, run. It doesn't work like that, because you've gone through years of losing your confidence, of not being affirmed as having anything, having any knowledge, having something to offer. And I think anybody trying to go through this process from a Global South perspective would need to also go through that process where you begin to affirm these Global South actors, give them the confidence to know they do have something to offer. We really want to learn from you type of mentality. And that way, then the Global South actors will say, okay, actually, by the way, I do know ABCD. They'll come up, you'll be amazed by what they will give you. Once they realize you're actually genuine and you really want to work with them, you really want for them to engage and give their ideas, give their solutions. So that process of affirmation is important. And then of course they rise up. Usually they rise up to the day. We witness this every day. They rise up and begin to engage, also ask you questions and provide ideas about how things could be done differently. And things will be very much different once you take that approach of asking them and building that confidence back. I call it reigniting, so that they can take back what has been taken from them after years of I don't know what's the right word, dominance or whatever it is here. Thank you.
Reigniting, your submission makes me to go back to my secondary school days, history lessons, the rebirth, reawakening. I think that's what you're really strongly calling for. And Deborah, with your rich experience of working with these executives, supporting them, inspiring them to make this move. In your view, if they do make that move, or the move we are asking these leaders in the INGO sector to make, what will it require of us in the Global South to actually take the power if and when it shall be shifted to us?
I think to help encourage the process, what Janet said around collaborating is a key part. So highlighting pain points was the word that came to me. So highlighting what are the pain points, what is not working, what needs to change. I would suspect the international NGOs are somewhat aware, but you can never understand another person's journey like they themselves can. And so collaborating on what are those things that need to change and working with the international NGOs to change them. Maybe it's the risk reports and the like that just don't work and trying to change them. Maybe it's the way that the money transfers. Maybe it's the type of training. And I'm thinking, because I think in change there is both the this is okay, this is not okay, like clear boundaries, but then it takes teaming in order to actually make the change. And that can be very hard, especially after you felt crushed for decades. Like that's, and so I ask myself, what needs to come from the global North in many ways is an understanding of that, a recognition of that.
Thank you very much. Some wonderful comments are coming in the chat. Osai Ojigo says, it is also changing the view that sharing power means someone is losing. How we move from a sense of scarcity to one of abundance available to all would help bring down the walls. Thank you very much. I like your choice of words, Osai. Tara says, solidarity or even effectiveness seems to be misplaced, informed by a skewed sense of purpose or impact, skewed with the northern voice often drowning out the rest who have a lived experience closer to the ground. It's important for our collaborators not to try to continue to drown us up. Caroline says, I think empathy is key and often missing. For instance, if dignity matters to you, it may also matter to others. Ownership and taking back power contributes to find again dignity. Deborah says, this was something I've wondered about. Is there a role for Northern actors to shift that confidence, or is it just about stepping aside? What is needed? What should the ecosystem invest here? I think this is really something we can interrogate further, Janet and Deborah. And I'll read the question or the point of view, by Deborah, which has pertinent questions for your perspectives. Is there a role for Northern actors to shift that confidence, or is it just about stepping aside? What is actually needed when we talk about shifting power? Janet?
I hope you can hear me. You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah. It takes actually both actors. Upping recognized the need from the one who is more powerful to engage. I think it takes that action, or it needs both actors to begin to engage together once they have come to that recognition. And creating spaces, just like Deborah said, creating spaces where that engagement can happen. It could mean, I don't think it's about the Northern stepping off. No, I don't think that's what we are talking about, because we need each other to succeed in what we want to do. One may have maybe resources, they may have a lot of knowledge from elsewhere, and that opportunity to share comes when there's that environment where both actors can actually talk together in a way where they're able to hear each other. To hear each other means you are not dominating. So we are not talking about shifting the power. Does not mean that they step off, but that they engage in a way that is respectful, that creates trust, that recognizes the information, the knowledge, the assets, etc., that the Southern actors have. And as you begin to harvest all that, you'll find whatever projects or whatever work it is you want to do is actually moving further with ownership, with the capacity to continue, whether you are there or not, because people have been engaged and they recognize they are happy to move. It is meeting a need that is shared. So for me, those are very important elements that would happen, so that both actors are actually contributing what they have together, not one stepping aside.
Thank you very much, Janet, for those rich insights. And Deborah, it will be good to hear your perspectives on this. Is it about one group of stakeholders stepping aside, or what actually is needed when we are talking about shifting power?
Yeah, I think it's about role transition. It's about mindset transition. It's about how you interact together and changing the dynamics of that. You, Janet, pointed to resources, both financial and knowledge. And it is a reality that particularly in the most fragile states of the world, having external resources come in is helpful and important. And both knowledge transfer from lived experience and from whatever research says is helpful to have that cross-fertilization. I was speaking with someone yesterday, and some really curious in the chat if this resonates with others, but this person was saying how in a lot of parts of the world, governments are closing down on civic space. And as that, they're trying to marginalize the role of NGOs so that there is less of that collective power from the individual citizens, and that having international roles actually helps to support local voice in places where the governments are less sharing in their power.
Thank you very much for that. Jack Kalipenta in the chat, I think this is with regards to what does it take, what does it require to take power? He says, it takes total mindset change. There is a sense of a messianic feeling and conviction to save the poor whose political leaders in the global South are corrupt and most non-governmental organization leaders are mere next government official, in brackets, NGO, who, given an opportunity, will abandon the civil society to join the same corrupt governments they were attacking once there is regime change. Thank you so much, Jack. Mamata, reiterates the need for a shift in mindset. She says, as we were sharing yesterday, it takes a shift in mindset, behavior, and system to change, to shift power. And I think that's really re-echoing what Deborah and Janet have actually said here. And Janet, I just want to come to you. If we are talking about, shift in power, we are definitely looking up to leaders, not necessarily positional leaders, but persons who will take up this mandate to ensure that there is action, that we will experience more power in the global south. So in your view, what new forms of leadership are required in our sector to drive this transformation we are talking about? Janet?
Thank you. I think we need a set of leaders or a leadership style that is more consultative, that is open to learning, that is not calling the shots, like this is what we're gonna do type of thing, but one that really goes with humility, creating a relationship where people can communicate. So it's a kind of leader who is not annoyed or so the leadership I think that we require for that to happen is, of course, one that recognizes that I don't have the best solutions. There are solutions that are there that can come from others, and really going out of your way, a leader that seeks help if necessary, so that you can have someone help you figure this out when you're not figuring out. Not one who is afraid to ask, or one who thinks they're afraid to get expertise. So I think these are the kind of leadership tenets that would be looking for in the South, as well as in the North. When you are in that process of engaging, it means people are on both sides are really ready to talk, to engage, to figure out things in a joint manner, to respect each other. I think respect is really fundamental, and to build trust. When you build trust, even if you step on my toe once in a while, I will be able to come back and say, by the way, I think this is how it is, or this is what I meant. And then you pick up again. We are not talking about a perfect world, but we are talking about a world where people work in an engaging, consultative, respectful. Respectful is really fundamental in this kind of conversation. That kind of a leader is the leader we are looking for.
Thank you very much. There is a point in the chat that buttresses what you're saying. It's from Victor Mugogo. He says, the call here is to repurpose the power we have. We all have power in varying degrees. Even local NGOs have power in their own context relative to their communities. The purpose of power is empowerment of others. Power must be used for serving the needs of others. Political power, financial power, resource power. So possibly we need to delve deep into grappling with various concepts from power shifts, power sharing, relinquishing power, etc. The biggest shift must start with shift in attitude and mindset rather than just shift in power. Thank you very much, Victor, for sharing this. And Deborah, I'm very curious to learn from you what new forms of leadership we need in this era to drive the transformation we want.
Yeah. When I think of the forms of leadership, or what I would hope for in each person who's involved, you would think first, as Janet and I touched on in the beginning, what's most within your control is what is within yourself. So noticing what are the stories that your mind is telling and asking yourself, is that true? And finding out if it's true, getting that information you need. It is internal curiosity in that way too, going, this is not working. Why is it not working? Who do I need to engage? What are the assumptions? And again, with internal integrity, And this is where to get your really big strength is, what is it that you most fundamentally believe is true? And how can you live that? Is there conversations that need to be had? Are there actions that need to be taken? So living within that deep truth. And then when you go beyond the individual to the interaction, it's seeking to see the value in others. What is the value in this circumstance, this situation, this person? And what is it that we need to figure out together? And then the third level, the focusing on the others, gets back to, I believe Janet said, respect, encouraging their voice. So where you see someone that's not speaking, but might have input, welcoming them in, encouraging them in, seeking that input. Because it's a leader that knows they do not have all the answers. And I believe a great leader creates the space where there can be answers that are figured out together. And that requires putting down your ego. It requires an abundance mindset. It requires a certain amount of bravery, because you cannot control in the same way when you are there to open the interactions.
Thank you so much. You keep hammering on the need for us to put aside our egos. And that really resonates with what Walton said yesterday in the opening remark when he said INGOs must let go of their logos and egos. I think the message keeps coming out clearly, and I hope the relevant actors are taking tips that will enable us be the transformative leaders we need for the sector. Colleagues, if you have any questions, it will be good to take one or two questions from participants in this session. So feel free to raise your hand and I will call you up or invite you to share your question. Just to take a few comments in the chat, Tosca from 5 Oaks says, so how do Southern CSOs involved in Ringo feel they do on power equalizing when there are significant differences in sizes, resources, global profile, brand? What do they do differently from what they see Northern NGOs do? I think that's a really very important question that we need to highlight that. You know, our comms team, I think that should be highlighted on our social media platforms so that Southern NGOs can equally interact and share their experiences with us in these conversations. Marik says, INGOs, like the INGOs in the Netherlands who have the position of intermediate donor, also need to think about having tough conversations with their donor, the Dutch government, about this role of being an intermediate donor. As far as I'm concerned, INGOs should stop taking this role. As far as I'm concerned, INGOs should stop taking this role. Thank you very much, Marich Priester, for that very firm recommendation. Gemma says, I think we have to give space to all the difficult emotions that arise in this process: the anger, the fear, the sense of loss, hope. Changes in policies and structures need to come alongside awareness raising, listening, sharing. Not enough time is given in the sector, yet that is how you change hearts as well as minds. Gemma, thank you very much for sharing those very insightful comments. I am still looking forward to having colleagues who want to share perspectives or raise some questions for, our panelists to take these. If not, let me take one question this is from Tara Rao. One question that seems to linger with me is whether the North has the capacity to play its part in shifting power. So I think it's a matter of intent and capacity. And then, of course, action. The North's capacity is important since they need to trigger the shift. Mm-hmm. Deborah, I would like you to talk about this. You have a rich experience working with many of these organizations. Looking at what can you say about the capacity of organizations in the North vis-a-vis their responsibility to lead effort towards the shift we are talking about?
Yeah. The first thing that sparked to my mind hearing Tara's thing was around, and I dropped in the chat, Bond has a guide that I found useful if you're sitting at a headquarters perspective on things to think about. The North. What is that for your organization? Like, look at your board composition. And I know some of our member organizations are doing that. Can we have a more globally balanced board? Can we have a more globally representative senior staff that are making decisions? So when we presume this is a Northern organization and it has a Northern perspective, does it have to be that way? So it's the first thing that comes to mind, is just looking at within yourself as in your own organization, how do you have a better informed perspective through, and I think that is through diversifying the voices that are at the table.
Thank you very, very much for that insight being shared there. And as I was just thinking through Tosca's point on Southern CSOs having a role, within RINGO, I think given the experience of WACSI, I am very confident, and correct me colleagues if I'm wrong, WACSI has been playing a forefront role, in this RINGO space, and, we've been given that opportunity, that platform to lead the discussions, to share the processes and ensure that in a very collaborative manner, we listen to one another equally. We take recommendations, particularly from WACSI and other stakeholders in the Global South, to ensure that we are where we are today. And I'm sure many other organizations that have actually been a part of this process will definitely, share their experiences, because it is worth knowing, as that is great learning that we can build on moving forward. I can't see any hands raised, so I'll just continue. I'll take a couple more questions from the chat. Yes, Kira? I can hear Kira talking. Do you want to share a perspective? Oh, I'm sure that was a mistake. Thank you. And just to say, colleagues, many of these issues that are being raised here speak very close to structural racism. My colleague, Andrew, will be leading a session on structural racism, which of course, you don't want to miss that session as part of this festival. It's a very, very important session that, will be coming up. Isabel Jean, I think this is in response, to Tosca's perspective in the chat. Tosca agreed, and this has been tested by multiple behavioral insight teams. ALNAP 2017 annual meeting was dedicated to issues related to how change happens, including how to start it. Everyday processes, guidance from management, rewards and incentives, etc., are important. And actually, there is a report that actually highlights how more of these examples shared by Isabel. Thank you very much. Bonnie Koenig says, taking actions to bring about behavior change, modeling where we want to go. That is in view of a recommendation in terms of, what it requires to actually bring about the change we want. And Tosca appreciates, the perspective from, Isabella. Thank you for pointing us to your resource. And many other colleagues can actually access that resource and get an experience of what has been tested so far. Deborah has actually shared in the chat, from a specific tactics lens, Bond has a helpful guide. You can click that guide from Bond to, appreciate what are some of those actions that have been tested and that can actually lead us towards the transformation we need. At this juncture, colleagues, I would just want us to, share our insights, and a question will be, a Mentimeter link will be shared in the chat for us to interact more closely on two important, questions that require a broader perspective. And of course, Deborah and Janet, kindly stay on. I'll be coming back to you. Leslie, can you kindly share the Mentimeter link? Great. There is a Mentimeter link for us to take, a couple of questions, the next couple of minutes, and it will be good to project the question on the screen so that everyone can see it, and then we see the responses as they flow in. The first question, what should civil society in the global north start doing differently to relinquish power? What should civil society in the global north start doing differently to relinquish power? Colleagues, kindly click on the Mentimeter link that has been shared in the chat. Share your responses, and we are going to see the responses popping up on the screen. I can see one coming in already. Stop hands-on delivery. Stop hands-on delivery. Shift financial resources. Telling those in the north what you specifically want. The question again, what should civil society in the global north start doing differently to relinquish power? They should facilitate spaces. If civil society cannot create equity in their own organizations themselves, how can we expect them to relinquish power to the global south? Change starts with the serves. I think that's a very, clear reminder of what Janet and Deborah have been hammering on, the need for serve awareness. Rethink risk. We should listen. We should change boards. So change boards, I like that. Some boards have been, have moved from founding boards to they're almost becoming eternal boards. We need to change our boards. Some should close as an intentional act. The leadership understand the importance of giving out power. Redefine solidarity. There needs to be trust. Thank you very, very much for this wonderful insight. And we'll move to the second question. What should civil society in the global south start doing differently to demonstrate the power they have? We read from Victor's comments in the chat that organizations in the global south do have resources, power. However, this is a question for us to share more of those insights. What should civil society in the global south start doing differently to demonstrate the power we have? We should trust ourselves. I like that comment. We should trust ourselves. Take up the space. These are really firm recommendations that must be heeded to by many actors, in the global south. Be more confident, show impact, connect with others in solidarity, saying no to partnerships with NGOs. That's a difficult one, yet a very important recommendation worth considering. Lead by example, take power and be confident. Build that confidence to challenge. I hear a lot of confidence popping up. It's important for actors in the global south to listen and listen very well to these recommendations. Write, publish your knowledge. Find time to do this so that you show evidence of your knowledge and work. Be genuine. Set up collective leadership. Keep the responses coming. Keep the perspectives coming in, colleagues. Thank you all for the suggestions. What should civil society in the global south start doing differently to demonstrate the power they have? Thank you all so much, colleagues, for those wonderful insights that you're sharing. And I'll just come back to you, Janet, Deborah. I'm sure you must have been monitoring the recommendations, the perspectives that have been shared by colleagues, by participants in this discussion. What is that highlight that you would want to share with us all? Deborah?
I think what I'd like to do is just add a piece, which is this change is real. I get confused and frustrated when I hear people say, we tried before. Is anything really going to be different? I convene people, my peers and I from different conveners around the world gather monthly, and it's happening all over the world. It's slower than we might like, but it's like an airplane, you know, every day you move 1 degree different and you end up an entirely different continent. And so both the internal work and how you work with other people, figuring out how to make it work. It's happening, but it's happening because we choose to make it happen. So I think both the internal work and the how do we make this better need to be daily questions. And that's, I've heard that from the chat too.
Thank you very much, Deborah. And Janet?
You know, I would say, if you think of whether you're in the North or you're in the South, why we're engaging with this kind of work, we want to make a difference. We would like to deal with poverty challenges. We would like people to be in control. And there are different ways in which you could express this. So if we really want to make lasting change, I think it's so important that we find, if you're in the South, of course, you need to engage and do all those things I saw coming out very powerfully. If you're in the North, same. So for us to really achieve our objective, I think it is so important that we just shift the way we are working to a point where we can look for lasting change that communities own, change that is lasting, you know, transformation of minds. You know, there are so many challenges in our world that no one person can do. So just throwing our weight around will not take us anywhere. We want communities to be in charge. So for that to happen, honestly, this transformation needs to happen so that we can have a win-win where whether you're in the South or you're in the North, you are actually making a lasting difference in the most powerful or in the neediest people that we have in our globe, you know. So holding power, not receiving it, not taking charge will not take us anywhere, but if we really collaborate, share, engage, connect with each other, find solutions that are owned by communities, we will achieve that difference we want to see in our world today. That's what I'll be looking for, and that's what I'd like to make every day. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you so much, Deborah, for those powerful insights. And, you know, some key things that are still resonating on my mind, you know, Deborah, when you started, you said we need a reality check, you know, and Janet, you went on to say it is a moment for reignition. You know, I think these are some keywords that are bubbling on my mind as elements that we need to take up as we seek to transform the sector. And on Thursday, we have 2 sessions that, you know, will follow, you know, from some of the issues that have been raised in this session. We have a session on All About You, an exploration of the inner work needed to transform the system. It's going to be at 12 noon UTC. Please make it a date to join us for that session. And at 13:15 UTC, we have another session on all about our organizations, how to bring our colleagues on this journey. And I'll be very happy to see all of you in that session because I will be on that session as well. Today at 6 p.m. UTC, Andrew will be holding an open space session on dismantling structural racism. The link has been shared in the chat. You can join us for these sessions. There is more to be discussed, to be explored. And if you feel that you have a pertinent issue that you want to interrogate, feel free to join in one of our open spaces. You can book for one of those open spaces and you will have the slot and we will have participants join you to interrogate some of these pertinent issues we are talking about. Thank you all so very much, colleagues, for joining us for these sessions. I would just want to take a rundown of the upcoming sessions and it will be projected on our screens. The upcoming sessions for the day, we have some innovative edge sessions that have been planned for you. These innovative edge sessions, you know, some will actually focus on the RINGO prototypes that, you know, have been piloted over the period, and you don't want to miss the session on the decolonizing advisory community, the on-time aid to Northern CSOs, you know, the session on for the people, by the people, an alternative solidarity model, you know, and we will be sharing a meal sometime today from 5 p.m. to 5:15 p.m. Please come with those delicacies and let us just share have some fun, and let the collaboration begin even in this space. We equally have an open space session this evening, between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. 3 actually lined up. Feel free to join the session of interest to you. One is actually going to focus on, is the environmental and conservation NGO sector ready to shift power and transform? We are equally going to have one, and thanks to our French-speaking colleagues for leading on this, décoloniser-led perspective de l'Afrique subsaharienne. Actually, decolonization of a perspective from French or Francophone sub-Saharan Africa. That is a session you don't want to miss out on. There is equally another open space session on dismantling structural racism, one which I talked about, dismantling structural racism in the INGO sector. Feel free, colleagues, to join us in any of these sessions, as we will be very delighted to continue the conversations with us all here. Once again, Deborah, once again, Janet, thank you for sharing these provocative insights. Thank you for sharing these firm recommendations that require us as INGOs and NGOs in the Global South to start having a reality check. Think of ourselves from within and do what's needed for humanity. And for organizations in the Global South, many of the participants recommended that we should be more confident, we should document our stories and show impact. We need to tell our stories, as that is going to be a conduit that will really demonstrate our ability somehow to take the power that is here for us. Colleagues, it's been the session on whose change is this. The message is clean and clear. INGOs, you have a lot of work to do. And from RINGO, from this session, and from us all, we are inviting you to follow these recommendations as time has come for us to move beyond rhetoric. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a wonderful session. Have a good afternoon, good morning, good evening, and we look very much forward to having you in the subsequent sessions. Thank you and goodbye from us all at RINGO, and we look forward to continuing the conversations with you all day today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow. Enjoy this lovely music from our wonderful tour and Leslie and all from the Rios, RINGO, and Waxy team that is bringing to you the RINGO Learning Festival. Thank you and see you soon. Bye for now.
Oh, Bema, Bema.